Gracias. So welcome everyone. We are going to have a slight part of our agenda on social policy. To put it in context, I believe that whereas Greens have focused a lot of their energy in their first decades of activity on the environmental... No marcha? Channel 4? I can't read. I think it's 4. Yeah. Whereas we have focused most of our activity on trying to defuse the environmental time bomb, we know that there's a social time bomb ticking and that it gains importance in the people's lives. And I would argue that if we are not very credible on arguing also solutions on the social front in the election of 2014, we stand little or no chance to be heard. So just arguing on the traditional, environmental green agenda will do us no good if we really want to come out winning this election. Now, we identified that need already a long time ago when we started trying to put flesh on the skeleton of the Green New Deal. You remember in 2009 we had this campaign where we had the Green New Deal as the main concept. And actually it was more a marketing gimmick than a real concept. But since we won with the marketing gimmick, we decided to put flesh on the bones of that marketing gimmick and make it something real. And we very soon realized that there had to be a very strong social dimension to the Green New Deal. And that's what we started working on about, 2 or 3 years ago. And we delivered a number of pieces on that work. I try to remember. The first was on green jobs, the second one on inequalities and poverty. The third one on social innovation, the fourth one on working time, and guess what? We are finishing with that very difficult topic, which is pensions. And we worked about a year in the social working group trying to achieve a common paper. And just for you to be very clear on what we try to aim with these papers. It's to provide a written version of what unites us in terms of principles. So even if pensions are mostly a national competence, it's not because it's not a European competence that we do not share a number of views as to what a pension system must deliver to people. And that's where we state our common ideas on that. Now, try to build upon that. We may want to become a bit more specific. And in these social policy issues, on some chapters, we had to remain very basic in terms of principles, not going into the details because the national situations are so diverse, but also sometimes the green positions are so diverse amongst us. So we limited ourselves to the common basic principles. Now, on some in some domains, we were able to move to build maybe the first floor of the common house with stating a number of common proposals. Even if these are not proposals to be argued at European level, these are common proposals that we will defend in each and every country in Europe, making us, again, a more consistent political force. So, on the pensions paper, let's say that the major principles that we recognize in the paper that we are going to vote tomorrow, and I expect this to be voted with quite a large majority because there's just a few differences left in the papers, which will translate into 6 or 7 amendments, which is not terribly a huge task to solve for the Council. The main principles we are tackling are the fact that pensions must guarantee a minimum income and a quality of life above for all, and that means basically poverty-proof pension systems. Recognize the diversity of career paths, that the idea that you had a 40 or 45-year career in one single sector, one single enterprise. These are things of the past that we argue for much more diversity in everyone's trajectory, and pension systems must take that into account and go as far as possible to a life cycle approach. We also want, when we have this diversity of systems between systems run by basically government or public schemes and private schemes, we want to give priority to schemes that are run within the broader framework of government or social security over those that are run by private insurance companies. And that's a statement that we are also going to make. which is also a difference than from pay-as-you-go systems and capital-based systems. Some capital-based systems are run by states, by the way. A last part of the paper will focus on the fiscal shift that is needed and the redistributive aspect that is needed within our funding systems, which are essential components if we really want them to be sustainable. And of course, there remains, and I'm very clear on that, differences amongst us that stem, of course, from differences into national systems, but also different views as to, how should I say, how far social security should go and how it should be built. And yes, well, we have differences amongst us. What really makes me happy is that when I compare what we achieved in this whole series of chapters on social policy versus what we did, the first social policy paper that we wrote maybe 5 years ago and that we voted in Geneva, if I'm not mistaken, is that, well, we've moved quite a lot towards convergence amongst us. I think this is something really valuable. So, introducing this debate, we will have two contributions from two very different perspectives. One will be from Spain, and that will be Joan Coscuela. Yes. Coscu. Okay. Starting from the Spanish perspective, well, how do we have to read those transformations into the pension systems? How should we avoid a number of traps that the language that we are using on these reforms push us in? And also, what are the ramifications of those debates in Spain in terms of, well, a European model, European social model, or European model of social security? And we will have a contribution from Jiří Časlavka. So you are a member of parliament for ICB in Las Cortes, correct? So I'm not mistaken, good. So at the Spanish level, Jiří Časlavka has been our partner on social policy sent from the Czech Green Party for a number of years. You were in the first in the working group on this, that elaborated the first paper on social policy, and you will give us a perspective on the pension reforms that we are witnessing in Central and Eastern Europe. I think that would be a good base for our debate. I would already say that we are going to proceed. Of course, we have little time, let's say maximum 60 minutes from now. I would ask our two contributors to speak for 10, maximum 15 minutes, and then over to you. Over to you. What I'd like you is, of course, to reflect on what will have been said, but also on looking forward towards the campaign. If we want to really make an impact on the social front during our campaign, what are the things that we should say? What are the things that we should advocate? What are the points that we should really stress? Where should we put the spear point of our language and campaign on the social front, if we really want to be heard? This is really what I would like you to provide us. The social policy, the working group will meet after this meeting to try to take the value of your contribution and try to shape maybe the components of the social part of the manifesto that we are going to write together. So, well, the more specific you are, the better it is. So, without further ado, let's give priority to our hosts here. Joan.
Thanks. Bien, buenas tardes, muchas gracias. Directo al grano. 3 cuestiones previas. Primero, la de la complejidad de una reflexión sobre seguridad social, que es una realidad completamente distinta en todos nuestros países. Nos obliga a ponernos de acuerdo de qué estamos hablando. Yo sugiero que en el futuro dejemos bien claro que estemos hablando de los sistemas públicos. Sugiero que nos pongamos de acuerdo que estamos hablando de sistemas públicos, bien sea de financiación contributiva por cotizaciones, bien sea de financiación fiscal, pero nunca de planes de pensiones. Hemos de empezar a dejar bien claro que los planes de pensiones son sistemas de ahorro que ni por concepto, ni por estructura, ni por su filosofía deben estar incluidos dentro del proyecto social europeo en el concepto de seguridad social, aunque soy consciente que en Inglaterra, en Irlanda, en los países anglosajones, se confunde ese plano. Segunda cuestión. Hoy estamos sometidos a una deformación de la realidad. Yo voy a intentar explicar algunos datos de la situación española para desmontar algunos de los tópicos que en el conjunto de Europa se han construido sobre la situación económica de la seguridad social española. Y en tercer lugar, en este como en otras cosas, somos víctimas de los think tanks del neurolenguaje. Fijaros bien que estamos hablando de la necesidad de sostenibilidad del sistema de seguridad social. Luego todos ya pensamos que si hay que hablar de eso es porque es insostenible y por eso tenemos que hacer sostenible. Estamos ya con una agenda muy marcada. Hechas esas tres consideraciones previas, entrar en materia. Primero, la seguridad social, junto con el conjunto de instituciones de protección social, es una de las señas de identidad de la esencia del proyecto social europeo. Sin eso no existe Europa, al menos tal como creo la debemos concebir. En segundo lugar, la seguridad social es posiblemente la institución de nuestros países más nacional, más estatal, de todas, porque además está íntimamente regulada y ha ido evolucionando con el modelo productivo de mercado de trabajo y fiscal y es mucho fruto de la historia de cada país. Por eso es imposible encontrar dos realidades idénticas y más en este momento. Tercer cuestión. En materia de seguridad social, protección social, Europa vive la más profunda esquizofrenia y es una esquizofrenia de dos tipos. Primero, es uno de los aspectos más autoexcluidos de los tratados. Es prohibido que Europa trate de seguridad social porque eso es de los estados nacionales, pero en cambio es en estos momentos el aspecto en el que la injerencia de los espacios europeos no democráticos, tecnocráticos o intergubernamentales más está incidiendo. Yo os puedo asegurar que en estos momentos los técnicos de la Comisión Europea llegan a redactar artículos concretos de las reformas españolas y vetan artículos concretos de las reformas españolas hasta ese nivel. Lo que se está planteando no es que la seguridad social no pueda discutirse en Europa, sino que no se discuta democráticamente en Europa. Además, hay otro aspecto muy importante de esa esquizofrenia. Se diseñan en Europa políticas de empleo y de mercado de trabajo que deterioran la cantidad y calidad del empleo y luego se pretende que eso no tenga consecuencias en los sistemas de seguridad social, que toda su base es la contribución del empleo. Y desde el punto de vista fiscal, se diseñan políticas de desfiscalización de las rentas del capital y luego se pretende que eso no tenga consecuencias en relación a la falta de recursos para abordar esas políticas. ¿Por qué? Bueno, pues posiblemente porque el capitalismo global ha situado una especie de frontispicio, no sé cómo se puede traducir eso, supongo que es fácil, frontispicio, que es el siguiente. La globalización se caracteriza por proletarios del mundo, distribuiros el trabajo, distribuiros el salario entre vosotros, que los beneficios del capital no se tocan y de impuestos ni hablar. Ese es entonces estamos en ese proceso, es decir, distribuiros entre vosotros, tanto el salario directo como el directo de las pensiones. Desde ese punto de vista creo que es importante romper profundamente esa esquizofrenia, empezando ya por los debates. Segundo bloque de temas que quería comentar. La situación de la seguridad social española me interesa mucho para el debate europeo. Es mayoritariamente de financiación contributiva, es decir, depende de las cotizaciones de empresarios y trabajadores, a pesar de que en los últimos años, en los últimos 20 años, el esfuerzo para incorporar financiación fiscal en el aspecto de protección de las bases más bajas en relación a la lucha frente a los riesgos de pobreza en personas de mayor edad ha sido muy importante. en contra de lo que se explica también desde España, ha sido fruto de unos procesos de reforma importantísimos desde el año 78, en gran parte consensuados social y políticamente hasta el inicio de la crisis. En tercer lugar, podemos hablar perfectamente de unos niveles de sostenibilidad aceptables de nuestro sistema de seguridad social. Disculpar porque los datos rápidos. Nosotros gastamos en España en estos momentos el 10,7% de nuestro Producto Interior Bruto en el sistema de seguridad social. Para que os hagáis una idea, la media de la Unión Europea es del 13,4%. Es decir, tenemos un recorrido de 2,7 puntos, que no es cualquier cosa desde esa perspectiva. Incluso en términos comparativos con las previsiones del 2050, ese elemento comparativo aguanta. Y nuestra regulación en materia de edad de jubilación, 65-67 años en el 2027, edad de jubilación real, 63,9, casi 64 años en estos momentos, y un fondo de reserva de 69.000 millones de euros a finales del 2012, ponen de manifiesto que existen condiciones de sostenibilidad en el sistema. El problema no está en la seguridad social, el problema está en la destrucción del tejido productivo y la destrucción de empleo que erosiona las bases. Por lo tanto, las medidas no deben buscarse solo en la seguridad social, sino en el mercado de trabajo. No hay solución, no hay seguridad social, ni en España ni en Europa, que soporte los niveles de destrucción de empleo que se están produciendo en estos momentos en Europa. No lo hay. Ni público, contributivo o fiscal, ni de capitalización. Porque para que haya modelos de capitalización privado, alguien tiene que ahorrar. Y sin empleo no se ahorra. Al menos yo no conozco la fórmula. Dicho eso, retos comunes que tenemos el conjunto de los ciudadanos europeos. Primero, creo que es muy importante. Las batallas comienzan a ganarse o a perderse en la batalla ideológica y especialmente en la batalla de la neurolengua, que es donde nos han derrotado en los últimos 40 años. Aspecto ideológico fundamental. En el siglo XXI, como ha sucedido durante el siglo XX, la seguridad social y la protección social no es parte del problema, sino parte de la solución. Un ejemplo español. La primera industria española, que es el turismo, no existiría sin el sistema del modelo social europeo, que ha permitido vacaciones generalizadas y al mismo tiempo pensiones y posibilidad de que los jubilados de toda Europa vengan a nuestro país. En segundo lugar, protección social en el sentido amplio, mercado de trabajo y fiscalidad son tres patas del mismo banco. No se pueden abordar por separado, esa es la trampa que nos están planteando. Nos dicen, no, el mercado de trabajo no se toca o se toca como queremos, la fiscalidad no se toca o se toca como queremos. Y ahora, lo que queda, las consecuencias de esas políticas, vosotros os las arregláis entre vosotros, os distribuís lo que queda después del impacto de esas medidas. Tercer elemento, no podemos permitir que la seguridad social, que es la institución por excelencia de nuestro modelo social europeo, se sustraiga a la capacidad de la soberanía de los ciudadanos, que es lo que está pasando en estos momentos. Se está haciendo por dos fórmulas. Deciden espacios intergubernamentales que no responden ante nadie, o tecnocráticos, mucho más, me temo, en el proceso de cómo se están produciendo algunas de las reformas diseñadas en estos momentos en el sector financiero, o, fijaros bien, aún más grave, es un reto que tenemos en España durante este año, encargándole a una fórmula algorítmica la decisión de qué se hace en materia de seguridad social, el famoso factor de sostenibilidad. Yo encargo a unos expertos que incorporen una serie de ingredientes en una fórmula algorítmica que va a decir cuándo tiene que cambiarse la edad de jubilación, ampliarse, nunca reducirse, por supuesto, cuándo deben de rebajarse las pensiones, cuándo deben de aumentarse las cotizaciones, con la exclusión total de cualquier espacio de decisión democrática. Es decir, es ya la tecnocracia en el nivel más límite de ese concepto. Desde esa perspectiva, algunos elementos conceptuales. La seguridad social vive la contradicción de todas las instituciones que son la base del Estado social de derecho. No es compatible una economía global con unas instituciones nacionales. Y eso, en materia de seguridad social, es mucho más difícil, porque la seguridad social, insisto, es aquella donde los estados retienen la supuesta soberanía para decidir y donde las decisiones cada vez son más globales, pero democráticas. Por lo tanto, hemos de plantear un proceso de acercamiento. Yo sé que en estos momentos no se puede hablar de unificación del sistema de seguridad social, ni tan siquiera posiblemente de armonización, pero sí de aproximación, y de aproximación democrática, porque si no aproximamos los sistemas de seguridad social con un debate democrático, nos los armoniza la competencia del libre mercado y la tecnocracia desde esa perspectiva. Voy terminando con unas últimas reflexiones desde la perspectiva de concepto del sistema. Yo creo cuáles serían las bases de esa armonización, de esa aproximación. Definir bien claramente que el sistema de seguridad social, protección social europeo, tiene dos patas. La pata contributiva, que en definitiva es solo la existencia de unos ingresos a partir de una determinada edad, cuando uno no presta trabajo, sustitutivos de rentas del trabajo, y la pata fiscal pública, garantizando unos mínimos para que quienes o no han podido contribuir o han contribuido menos puedan tener acceso a unas prestaciones básicas que les excluyan de cualquier riesgo de pobreza. Y debemos situar claramente la batalla para que los temas de pensiones estén situados dentro del capítulo de seguro privado. Voy a intentar explicar por qué. Creo que, sé el debate que se ha suscitado, creo que el debate que tenemos en estos momentos no es tanto si los fondos de pensiones tienen que tener desgravación fiscal o no, sino qué tratamiento se da al conjunto de los sistemas de ahorro. En España los fondos de pensiones tienen una penetración solo del 6% por tres razones. Primero, porque no hay capacidad de ahorro por la inmensa mayoría. Segundo, porque los fondos de pensiones en Europa, muchos de ellos son de empleo, y con la estructura de pequeña empresa española eso no es posible. Pero tercero, porque la política especulativa de la vivienda ha hecho que sea más rentable, ha hecho que sea más rentable ahorrar con la compra de vivienda y la especulación que con los fondos de pensiones. Esa es la razón. Por lo tanto, es imprescindible que lo que hagamos es un debate de los fondos de pensiones como lo que son, sistemas solo de ahorro. Y, por supuesto, de acuerdo con la idea de que el debate sobre sistema público y privado no es económico, es político. Cuantas más partes de la riqueza que generemos nosotros estén en manos del gobierno, del mercado, y no de la sociedad a través de los estados, más poder político tendrán los mercados y no los estados. En estos momentos es bastante evidente que gran parte de los procesos de especulación los están protagonizando fondos de pensiones de los trabajadores ingleses, irlandeses, de Estados Unidos, del Japón, desde esa perspectiva. Y ahora sí, termino de verdad. Hay un reto, pero creo que la historia del siglo XX nos demuestra cómo hacerlo en el siglo XXI. Y os lo explico con tres datos españoles. 1990, es decir, principios del siglo XX, España, 3.000 horas de trabajo media y una productividad y una distribución de esa productividad que no daba ni para tener pensiones, ni sanidad, ni educación, ni carreteras, ni nada. 1980-2000, España, 1.726 horas de trabajo de media y unos niveles de productividad que permiten tener un nivel de protección social que supera el 30% del Producto Interior Bruto. Se pasa del 3 al 30%. Creo que el milagro solo es uno, es cómo trabajar menos, más gente, con más productividad, con menos impacto en el medio ambiente y más distribución de la riqueza generada vía fiscal. A veces los problemas complejos requieren ser reducidos al análisis simple que casi siempre aporta la historia. Y la historia del siglo XX en Europa es una historia de éxito. Todo lo que sea separarse de esa historia es sin duda querer crear un monstruo que nos va a devorar a nosotros mismos, que es el monstruo de una economía global que decide que desaparece la democracia estatal, pero que no se construye la democracia global y que la sustituye por la tecnocracia global también. Ese es, yo creo, el resumen que os podría hacer. Gracias.
Gracias. Gracias, Joan. I think that you have pointed really two things at least that resonate totally with our work. Everything is integrated. I mean, you cannot just separate the debate on social security from the one on working time, from the taxation debate, and that makes it difficult to integrate it. But that's really what we want to do. We really want to have and to start building a comprehensive approach to those issues, which are political and not economical issues. These are really political issues. And that is the other point that I think that you've pointed. It's about democracy. It's about basically we citizens making our choices. Now, I would argue that, yes, you're right, the European Union has little or no competence in social policy, except that, as you say, there's more and more, as part of the European semester, of the European economic governance, more than influence, actually, pressure from Europe to change things into social security, and this is indeed done in a technocratic way. The reforms that are advocated by the civil servants of the European Commission are never debated in any democratic parliament. My argument would be to say that it is not because what is being done currently at European level is undemocratic that then we have to retreat to basically a purely national approach. The real issue to me is if we want to defend the diversity of the European social models, our only chance to be successful is to do it together. But then how can we do it in democratizing the whole process of making our choices together at European level? So I think that will be one of the questions that we need to tackle. Jiri, a view from Central Europe.
Yes, I am. Well, it's also about numbers, I think, and I will conclude my short presentation that our political choices are limited. I hope that my presentation is over there, hopefully.
It seems so, yeah.
When I was asked a few days ago that I should deliver a short overview about the pension system reforms in Central and Eastern Europe, I decided to be a bit provocative. This doesn't mean that I want to destroy current consensus here in European Green Party, but I want to stimulate a debate. I do not speak here on behalf of my party, despite of the fact that I am the economic expert of Czech Greens. So it's even provocative for Czech Greens, I think. So what are the main challenges in our region? Basically, during communist time, we had pay-as-you-go systems only, which were created in a world in which population was increasing or at least stagnating. And in Europe nowadays, as we know, the population decreases and will decrease. Basically, people live longer, which is good, and we have less children, which is probably not as good, but this is a reality. Of course, migration is a factor, but it has a certain limitation, as you all know. This graph, I think, is about the numbers I was talking about.
It's not following.
Sorry. No. Basically, this is the projection of the situation in 2060. The square is the region of Central and Eastern Europe, and you can see that, for example, in Poland, there will be almost 70% of retired people, this 65 plus. So this means that for 3 retired people, only 1 person in productive age will be working. So this will.
This one, I think. No? Yeah.
This will be very difficult for all of us. What challenges we face? We have still relatively low retirement age. It's around 60 years. In Western Europe, it's a bit higher rate. We have high replacement ratios and high contribution rates. Those all factors combined undermine the sustainability of public budget. And calls for some systemic reforms in pension system. Those reforms were started under the scheme of the World Bank in '94 under the recommendation, and basically the main idea was to reform pay-as-you-go system only with second and third pillar. Some general overview. 8 out of 10 Central and Eastern countries implemented mandatory second pillar. The only 2 countries which were not implemented this yet are Czech Republic and Slovenia. And the experience is mixed success or maybe a failure. Because we underwent a financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, and this was the important factor for second pillar reversals. Basically, in Hungary, it was completely nationalized by Orbán government, and also in Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Romania. They were lowering basically the contribution rate in the second pillar. Some minor actions were taken in Slovakia and Bulgaria. So there is a learning outcome that the second pension pillar is not immune to the political risk. Despite of this fact, especially in Poland, the second pillar is still relatively successful. Even it was reduced by 5%. Basically, this second pillar helped to the whole system to be less volatile and more diversified. Prior the economic crisis, the second pillar, the capital pillar, was more productive than during economic crisis, where the pay-as-you-go system were more stable than this capital pillar. In Poland, they use this reform for reform or for improving domestic capital market, because there was a rule that mostly pension funds should invest the money locally. what is the main problem in Central and Eastern Europe is that it's difficult to make this reform during financial crisis. The transitional costs are huge. And basically, one of the problem is that these countries cannot sustain this cost during these difficult times. I give you one small example. In Czech Republic, in my country, our government decided for 2% opt-out only, which is very mild reform. And this means every year almost 1 billion euro from public sources, and VAT was increased because of that. In the reality, because it's not complementary in Czech Republic, it will be much less because not that many people will decide to enter this second pillar. Also because of our social democrats, which most likely win next election, they don't want this system to continue. And what is most important is retirement age. Basically, we live longer, and it's not possible that people enjoy public retirement scheme for 20 or 30 years. This is definitely not sustainable. And last slide is I was talking about it with my reaction at the beginning. We have relatively limited policy space because it's about numbers. We will have by 2060 very a lot of old people, and not that many people in productive age, and political parties will have to get used to this change course and move away from number of dogmas. So this is my relatively provocative statement for the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you, Jiri. And actually, you pointed to themes that will be part of the amendments debate tomorrow, so it's not really a surprise. So, since we have just half an hour, I would really hand over to you now. I would ask every one of you who wants to intervene to keep it short and to the point. Try to contribute either questions, remarks, suggestions for our social policy angle in the campaign 2014. So, who wants to start? And I suggest we group them by threes or what? Didier.
Yeah, tomorrow I hope that we will vote a very important and very good text. This is a very important text, among other things, because we live longer. Each day we win 4 to 6 hours of life expectancy, and we live longer because of medical progresses, but also because we as Greens, since 30 years, we are fighting for a better environment. Because a longer life is not only the following of a better economical situation, but also following of a better environment. So this is an important text to vote because we will have longer time to have pensions. But one of the important things in the text is to say clearly that it is also important to have redistribution, and so to redirect the money going from private pensions to public pensions. So that's one of the things we will discuss tomorrow. But why is it important? One of the aspects is that poor people live shorter lives than rich people. So it is one of the reasons we have to say that the protection and specifically the pensions have to be more important for the poorest part of the population, for the people who have the lowest wages. That's all.
Thank you. Next. So I'll take so I forgot your first name. There, and then it's going to be Alain.
Thank you, Philip. Tuomas Viskanen from Finland. And there's one question I would like to be more thoroughly elaborated from now on, not in this paper or in the voting session tomorrow, but when we are facing the campaign of 2014. So it's intergenerational justice that is quite superficially handled in this paper now. And at the same time, we are facing a huge youth unemployment in Europe, and at the same time, we are facing huge, let's say, intergenerational problems in distribution of the payments in social and pension system. So these two combined may cause a big trouble in Europe and may cause problems and may cause unwillingness to contribute to the system by youth. And that's the one key question we should elaborate more thoroughly in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Alain.
I think the remarks of Didier are very interesting, and we have to insist in our text and in our propaganda that retirement is not mainly a financial problem. It's a choice. We have a choice about conquest of free time and the repartition of free time all along the life, or more centered on the end of a life. This is two great debates. Do we prefer consume more or have more free time? And where do we want to put that free time or take that free time? And second point, it is also a question of health. In France, we experienced a big leap forward of life expectancy after, and just after, the transformation, the reform that led the retirement time from 65 years old to 60 years old. Because that cut a lot of death and illness that occurred between 60 and 65 in the labor time. So when you work too hard and too long, you die more quickly. It's obvious, but it is also a statistical result.
So it solves the problem.
No, the problem was that by reducing the length of activity, not only you increased by going to retirement earlier, you increase the financial problem, but you also increase the financial problem by the fact that you were living longer. So do we want to live longer or be exhausted at work? This is a problem.
Okay, I'll maybe take Madeleine as well. I'm currently wondering whether I would simply let the debate go with the floor and give the floor back to our two speakers towards the end then of our half hour, if that is okay with you. No objection, Madeleine, you're next. Madeleine Petrovic from Austria.
Madeleine from Austria. I couldn't take part in the meeting in Athens because we had elections in Austria.
Oh, yeah.
Luckily, we won, so I'm very glad that the discussion on pensions advanced, and I think that the paper which was developed is quite good. I think, considering what Jerzy said, that. I'm glad that in our paper is that there shouldn't be any public subsidies or fiscal advantages for individual private pensions. I mean, that we mention private pensions at all is because it's a fact, it's reality. But what he pointed out and what we see in Austria, because all the private pension, practically all of them, are losing or not developing as the people were promised. So those who have environmental or ethical funds, they do a bit better than the others, but all of them are not developing as people were promised when they were almost caught to invest in those funds. So for me, I think it's good that we wrote that we don't want any public subsidies for that, but this part could even be shorter, and we just say it's an investment, like you could buy apartments or gold or I don't know what. But what we should not indicate is that public pensions, like we want them, are threatening the sustainability of public finances, what is a bit in the paper. And I think what you pointed out makes it quite clear. If something is threatening the stability of the system, then it's those private pillars, and it's the financial market and the lack of political control of the financial market, and not public pensions.
Thank you, Madeleine. You're next. Yeah, you? Michael. Okay. From the Young Greens?
Yeah, from the Young Greens. And isn't it good?
I guessed it.
Huh? You guessed it. Didn't you see me in the pensions working group?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I think it's nice it's really cool to see that we are discussing first the youth emancipation, and we discuss the pension. I think that is kind of a sign of intergenerational solidarity and intergenerational justice. And we, as the Young Greens, we also were in almost all of the working groups, and we try to bring in our ideas, because we think that we do not only work on youth policies, but we think also onto our future, but not only onto our future, but also the future of our parents. Having said that, I wanted to actually just make the point which has been already made. Just pointing it out maybe from the youth perspective a little bit. What contributed a lot to the current crisis was the huge financial sector, which was blown up by private capital-based pension funds, which then get leveraged to many different financial tools to blow up this thing. And the more or the bigger the financial sector is, the more volatile it gets, and the more volatile the financial sector is, the more insecure are our pensions. That's why I just want to point out again that these capital-based private pension funds, although we cannot, or the paper does not restrict them or prohibit them, should not be subsidized by the government and by the state. It is not only this volatility issue, but it's also an issue of redistributing from the poor to the rich. And I think we as Greens, we stand with the majority of the people, not with the 1%. So that is the contribution from the Young Greens.
Thank you. Now, if I look at our electoral results, they are closer to 1% than to 51%. So, well, we need to change this. It's probably not the same 1%, by the way, but... No, I agree. I totally agree. Anyone else? Then I'll switch back then maybe to here first and then to Johan. Since, well, there were a few comments on your argument on the private pension schemes.
Okay, thank you. It was maybe a misunderstanding, because I never said that I am against private sector scheme. I only said that in Eastern Europe or in Central Europe, where historically we had only pay-as-you-go only systems, and now we are trying to transfer the system. It's always is better to stay on more legs, to be that is. In my view, it's more sustainable. And in financial crisis, it is in times of financial crisis, this is very expensive for these countries, and that's why this is failing. But I am not against private schemes, and if those private schemes will be not supported, simply they will not exist as pension schemes, because if you are a pension fund, you have to invest according to certain rules, and this means that you are not that profitable as other funds, but the investment is more safe. But if people will have not these incentives from states, they will simply not save and invest their money for the retirement age, and the biggest responsibility will be on states, which is totally not possible. I said that it is about numbers, and it will be really in all our countries in 2060s that we will have like 3 people which will be older than 65, only 1 person which will be in a productive age, and this is unsustainable. You can hear already now from young people, especially in countries like Spain, that with situation with very high unemployment, it is difficult for them to contribute to these schemes. This will not work. I think that's why I said this is not about ideology. This is not about democracy. This is about numbers, and those numbers are against us. This is my view.
Okay, Joan. A bit of controversy, I think.
Lo siento, pero discrepo profundamente. Vamos a ver. Es evidente, lo decíamos antes, las diferencias que hay en toda Europa. Por ejemplo, los últimos datos que creo que están armonizados, que es el 2009, sitúan un diferencial de recursos destinados a seguridad social pública, protección social, de casi 13 puntos entre la República Checa y Dinamarca, del 20 al 33%. Sin duda, es una realidad fruto de la propia evolución. En segundo lugar, por supuesto que en el diseño de las políticas de seguridad social la economía cuenta, como no podía ser de otra manera, pero la economía sola no, la política también. Hacer previsiones para el 2060 es importante, pero las previsiones no solo son demográficas. En España, en pleno debate de la primera reforma en 1995, alguien vaticinó la quiebra del sistema público en el 2001. En aquella fecha, nuestro sistema de seguridad social tenía unos niveles de sostenibilidad como nunca los había tenido, porque se habían producido 2 fenómenos: flujos migratorios no previstos en el cálculo demográfico y, en segundo lugar, además, un crecimiento significativo importante. Nuestros problemas actuales tienen poco que ver con las estructuras de seguridad social, tienen mucho que ver con la caída en picado del volumen de empleo y de la calidad del empleo en un sistema de base contributiva, y si la base desaparece es imposible construir nada. Nosotros creo que debemos ser partidarios de las reformas, por supuesto que sí, y todos los sistemas de seguridad social tienen mucho margen para las reformas, pero reformas no es derribo, y de reformas no es convertir un sistema de responsabilidad pública en un sistema de responsabilidad individual, porque tiene unos elementos de perversión contrarias a la solidaridad muy importantes, y no solo intergeneracionales, sino entre géneros también muy significativo, y porque además no es cierto que unos sistemas de carácter privado sean más sostenibles que unos sistemas de naturaleza pública. Vamos a ver. No digo que se haya dicho así, pero se dice, no digo que se haya dicho así en este momento, pero se dice en el debate. Si los jóvenes en estos momentos no confían en el sistema público porque creen que en el futuro no van a tener pensión porque no van a poder recibirla fruto de la evolución demográfica, pueden confiar en su capacidad de ahorro con un sistema privado con los niveles de empleo y de precariedad que tienen. Los sistemas privados son mucho más sensibles al terremoto de las crisis, porque además no dependen del conjunto de la economía real, sino de la economía financiera, que se ha demostrado que es tremendamente más volátil. En España, en estos momentos, los niveles de sostenibilidad de los sistemas de pensiones privados están por debajo del nivel de sostenibilidad del sistema público, porque la brutalidad de la caída de la capacidad de capitalización y de gestión de los sistemas privados es importante. Y quiero llamar la atención en relación a una trampa que nos llega de Suecia. Digo la trampa porque nos la quieren colocar en España. Es la famosa reforma pactada en su momento en Suecia. Es un poco técnico, pero me vais a dejar 2 minutos porque es muy importante, porque creo que es donde está la verdadera trampa del sistema. Nos dicen, no, vamos a mantener el sistema público, pero vamos a incorporar mecanismos de sostenibilidad. ¿Cómo? Le llaman cuentas nocionales. No sé cómo se puede traducir, pero es muy sencillo. Consiste en lo siguiente: cada trabajadora desde que empieza a trabajar se le anota en una cuenta, como si fuera un sistema privado, se le anotan sus ingresos de las cotizaciones, y cuando llega la edad de jubilación se le suman, y en función de las perspectivas de expectativas de vida que tenga fruto de las tablas demográficas calculadas, se distribuye todo lo que ha aportado en el conjunto de meses o de años que se supone que va a vivir. Qué bonito, ¿no? Qué perfecto, puro. Es a cada uno según su esfuerzo, pero no sus necesidades. Fijaros el impacto que eso tendría en las mujeres. Las mujeres se caracterizan por 2 elementos en esta sociedad. Tienen los salarios más bajos, por lo tanto cotizan menos y tienen más expectativa de vida de media. Por lo tanto, ese sistema supondría que no solo se las condena a cobrar menos, sino que se las condena a que después, durante todo el periodo de expectativa de vida, van a cobrar menos de pensión porque han cotizado menos por el propio concepto de incorporar capitalización, la cultura de la capitalización, que es que cada palo aguante su vela, a la cultura de un sistema público de pensiones que es fundamentalmente de reparto de la solidaridad. La perspectiva del 2060 tiene que incorporar 3 factores. El demográfico, sin duda, pero hay 2 más. El del reparto del empleo, el del crecimiento de la productividad y el de la fiscalidad necesaria para poder sostener todo eso. Y ahí es donde entra el debate sobre los sistemas privados. Por eso yo insisto en que pensiones privadas debe de darse un tratamiento global como el conjunto de mecanismos de ahorro. Si el Estado tiene recursos para bonificar, desgravar los sistemas de ahorro, puede discutir si los dedica a eso o los dedica a un mecanismo de protección social pública. Porque ¿por qué se canalizan al sistema privado? No es un problema de sostenibilidad, es un problema político. Cuanta más parte, eso yo creo que es lo único que nos tenemos que poner de acuerdo todos. Cuanta más parte de la riqueza global que se gestione privadamente, más poder político tienen los mercados y menos la sociedad organizada democráticamente en sus instituciones, sea nacional o sea estatal. Y ese es el debate de fondo.
You want to respond? Okay, go ahead.
Well, historically, we in Czech Republic or Eastern Europe, we had only public systems. That's why we feel that it's healthy to have also second and third pillar to our pension system. But I also support public scheme as the main one. However, the recent example or recent lesson from Cyprus shows that well, public and private goes together. If there is something wrong, you are never safe in public nor in private. And let's say, well, Czech Republic currently, we have our cumulative debt of about 45% of GDP, which is, comparable to Spain or to many other European countries, very, very low. And according to statistics, if we are not going to do any reform of our pension systems in about 40-50 years from now, our cumulative debt will be three times higher. How come you can do in Spain this without any major reform? This is definitely not sustainable. And the last 2 or 3 sentences. Let's face the reality. In countries like China, India, Brazil, they can produce as good products as we can, but much more cheaper. And technically, it's comparable. So if we take a lesson from Japan or from Korea, Europe will face a difficult 10 or 20 years. These countries will have the higher standards, environmental standards, higher salaries, etc. And basically, we have to, if we will not stay competitive, basically, we will be not able to save our European social model. That's what I am saying.
Yeah, well, I will not go back to the floor because I know that it's going to be very heated. Well, I just want to say 2 things. Here. First, competitiveness is a major issue, I would agree, but I look at competitiveness, as your capacity to create high value, and that's the numerator, against the most effective cost structure, not just labor costs, but energy, resource, and capital costs. And I would like to say that, yes, if the Chinese, for instance, are ramping up their capacity to go up on the value chain, well, we have to do exactly the same thing. And then that's the question of what you say, okay, where is our economy going? What is the improvement of our ability of creating value, the productivity aspect that you mentioned? That is absolutely key. Second, where I might have a difference with you is on the public support of the private schemes. I find it a bit odd that the private pension funds say we cannot function without public subsidy, like the big banks say we cannot function without a public subsidy. And by the way, the public subsidy for banks has been assessed at basically the same amount as the profits they do. In other terms, without the subsidy, they don't do profits. I find it not to be a market economy. This is not a market economy if the state has to subsidize it. And so if we are not in a market economy, let's say it. But if we are in a market economy, I would like the market players to be able to fly on their own without public support. And if they cannot generate the value that allows them to pay back, then it means that their value creation model is simply not there. It's not working. And therefore, we have to work on that. How can our economies, again, become creative economies, economies that create value, not economies that just are happy by just consuming stuff that others do, or by speculating. Speculation is no value creation. But value creation is hard. It's difficult. It requires creativity, inventiveness, thinking ahead of the others, etc. And I think that that's part of the equation. But I will leave it at that. I would say that we are going to pursue the discussion not specifically on pensions, but more on, well, what do we do with social policy in the campaign of 2014 in our working group that will follow. But before thanking our speakers, I need to tell you that there will be 3 short presentations right after this and before the break on the food campaign, on the LGBT campaign, and on the climate change website. So let me thank our 2 contributors. It was provocative and will help us moving forward. Thank you. ¿Tienes una Pero me gustaría seguir la discusión. Es muy complicado.